Hello. Then I will talk about how to design API at the enterprise level and how to manage the complexity, the productivity, and the most important point, features, is about the consistency of all API in the enterprise model. It's not its business model is not economic model as the previous workshop. It's more about a data model or operation model. Okay, just something that I meet on my previous project. There is, when we design API, there is a big gap between the business people and the technical people that usually design the API. How to deal with that? There is a complexity of, there are many HTTP rules, pattern, API convention. How to deal with that? It's very complex. When we talk about with the product owner, it's very business oriented, and it would be interesting to have a diagram to talk about. And there is, oh, sorry, it's at the end of the screen, but there is often a lack of consistency in the business definition. Just an example, if you define a customer, it could be defined differently in many APIs. I have seen once an API which has been designed with 14 times the same business concept model in the same API. 14 in one API. With this approach, it will be very different. Okay. Then, just in a nutshell, usually when we design API, we have this kind of tools. Okay, the tools, they are very interesting, but it's very HTTP oriented, it's very technical oriented. For product owner, it's very difficult to have a rationale based on the business concept. The idea is to talk more about, I have a customer journey, I want to talk about a use case, I want to talk about the data that I will exchange with the API, and also the list of operation. It's by far much easier for product owner or business stakeholder to deal with this kind of diagrams. With this one is okay. At BNP Paribas, there is someone that told me we need 50 business analysts that, if they know HTTP, it would be very great, or 50 API designers that know very well the business. There is a challenge. It's very difficult to find people that can design API and can understand the business concept. Then the idea is to automate as much as possible the generation of the Open API. Then for that, we need to increase abstraction. Abstraction, it means that we need to formalize the business requirements. Then to formalize requirements, the idea was to use a modeling language. In this case, it's UML. It provides diagrams. It supports many objects. It's object-oriented design. It's very interesting. For instance, polymorphism and inheritance. It's very interesting for business definition, to keep the API as much as possible, as long as possible, in the same Meyer version. There is a very good feedback from the user, the stakeholder. Like that, we can deal with them. I already did hundreds of workshops with business people, and we talk using UML diagram. After even if they don't know UML, after 5 minutes, we don't talk about UML itself. We talk about business issue. Oh, I want to expose this data. I want to talk about this operation. I want to talk about this use case. Okay, UML provides metadata. In Match, there is very good coverage of the API design. Well, it's just to show that from UML, I can design automatically a large part of the Open API. Okay. You will have the PowerPoint. Okay, alors, just in a nutshell, the idea to generate Open API, its first step is about business requirements, totally business oriented. Then business people, they write their use case, their business requirements. Okay. These business requirements are transformed into a formal model done in UML. We have class, interface with operation, use case, and so many things. And there is no HTTP, there is no API concern. It's totally business oriented. And after, we will transform the business model from the functional design to the technical design, we transform into a set of API. It's very, very, very fast and very consistent. For that, I use Swappy. This is a tool that I've developed to transform the UML model into an open API. I will talk more about. Okay. And this is, of course, totally API first approach. It cannot be more API first approach. Okay. Then it's very important to separate the three parts and to automate this part, to automate from the functional design to the technical design. Okay, just in a shell for the business people, they write the use case, and from the use case, we transform, we apply patterns, and then we transform the business requirement in text into a UML model. Well, I don't want to talk too much here, because I want to talk more about consistency and productivity. Okay, manage the consistency. Alors, as I told you minutes ago, a concept can be designed many times if you have many APIs. The idea, just to explain, it was in a white bank, I don't know. There was a day round table, and the subsidiary explained us, I have many product owner and business stakeholder. For each team of business people, I have a team of API designer, and there is also a team of API designer that made reviews and make consistent the set of all API designed by these teams. The idea is, I just want to have business people and 1, 2, or 3 API designer, and generate the API. Okay, it could be strange. In this case, 50 API designer. In this case, 2 API designer. Of course, it's a little bit, the subsidiary is a little bit wider than this one, but they need many people, and we need less people. Okay, then the idea is to define model, and at the enterprise level, and from this model, we will generate all the API, and also, not only the API, but also the Avro schema. If you use a Kafka, you have to define a message, and this message, it could be very interesting if the message are consistent with the API. If not, the binding, it would be very painful. Our gPC is not yet done, but it's coming. But the idea, one model for the enterprise, and from this model, we will generate all the API. And one concept, one business concept, is designed only once. Of course, there is a tip. After, we can tailor each business data. But it's designed in the UML model only once. Okay, for instance, we have here an object which is the financial product. And from the one definition, this object will be included in all of this API. And I have also many other objects that are in many, even all the API, the problem, for instance. Okay, important. Huh? One definition for at the enterprise level of each business concept. Okay, alors imagine in the UML model, in my current client, we have already hundreds of class of business definition. And we have many API. Not so much for the moment, but each API is very, very complex. It's very often 3,000, 4,000 lines of code in the Open API specification. It's very large. Yes. Alors, as I told you, of course, we design. It's interesting because when we talk about with the business people, we talk not about the API. We talk about, I want to expose this data. But I'm not sure that each of data will be exposed in this API or in this API. There is another step. Well, for this API, I want to embed this property and not this one. Okay? When the checkbox is checked, it means this property of this object is embedded in this API. And like that, the business, the schema in the Open API are very, very consistent from all the other API. Then if I do a composition, an API that calls another API, it's very consistent. I don't have 14 times for one API. I have one definition at the enterprise level. But there are mechanisms to, if the model evolves, of course, the tools warn us, there is a new property. Do you want to embed this property in the API? Do you want to embed or not? And so on. Okay. From the UML model, when we update, when we add, when we remove a property, the tool, in fact, update all the API that may be impacted. Sometimes, depending on the context, there is a confirmation to the API designer, but many parts are automatic. Okay. There is also the example. It's interesting. Example, if you want to create a data test, how do you do today? You write manually the test, but if your model evolves, what about your example? You have to rewrite your example. In this case, not. I developed a tool for allowing business people to create instance of the object. Then they set values of the object in the UML model itself. Like that, business people can set value. It's very, and like that, from the instance in the UML model, it will be transformed, and using the definition, it will be transformed in example in the Open API. If the UML model evolves, the examples are automatically updated. And it takes also into account the constraint on the schema on the API and so on. But what is very important is the consistency is totally managed. Okay, there is a consistency. This is an editor for creating a link in an Open API. I don't want to talk more, but it's automatically managed. Okay. There is also a version comparator. Because we have a UML model, we have a lot of metadata, then the comparison is not file by file. A file of Open API version comparing to a file of another version of the same API, it's much more complicated. It takes into account the metadata, UML, and so on. Then like that, the comparisons are very, very accurate. And all of these things are automatic. Okay, and there is also linter, HTTP rules, and so on. Okay, this is about the consistency. For me, consistency is by far the much more feature that we have to manage. But because everything is automated, the productivity is very high, very, very high. I think that at least the productivity using this kind of tool is 30 times faster than the standard tool to use to design API. An API that a 3,000 line of specification code, it could be generated of a design automatically in 25, because we just have adjustment in technical design, but 3,000 lines of code can be generated in half an hour, less than half an hour. Yes, and it's a very with no error. Okay, alors just here we create operation. There's this operation transfer into the API. The API, in fact, many steps automated, and from the operation, the tool Swappy transform it into into YAML. In fact, okay. Also about the schema. Also about. What is interesting? This is the percentage of time. Then, large part of the work is about the business requirement, because it's very important. Probably 60 to 65% is with product owner, business stakeholder. And the API designer is, for me, it's less than 1% of the whole process. Because I want to be focused on the business. And with this kind of method, we have very focus on the business and not on a technical issue. I remember when I write Swagger manually, but very soon we have focus on the technical issue, what is the API conversion, what is how to manage the consistency. Yeah, really not. We are very focused on the operation. I just have 1 minute. Just to show you a video, but very fast. Where's the video? It's here. Okay. It's an old video, but I start from 0. What is important? You have to start. Start. Okay, I will accelerate. Then it explains from the model how I generate a Swappy. What is interesting is, not yet. Here's the model, I create an API. Here there is something, here the YAML is generated automatically. Of course, I don't have to write the YAML. I will add. Here, the YAML will be created, 10 lines. There is a time counter, and I just go to advance. 5 lines. Okay. With the Swappy, the schema are all computed automatically. It means here I have, in 1 second, I pass from 55 lines to more than 1,600 lines of code. Because I use UML model, I use a formal model, formal grammar, I'm able to automate many things to generate the API. And I can show you, I can advance, everything is managed, response, the link, the endpoint, everything. Okay. 15 minutes, and I have 2,300 lines of code. It's very fast. I told you 30 times, I think it's by far much, but I prefer to say only 30 times faster than the other tool. And it's I'm very lazy, in fact. Then many things are automated. The consistency is managed. The productivity is very high because we start from a business model. And what is also important is that we are focused on the business and not on HTTP concern. Okay. Just to to finish. In conclusion, think business, not technical design. Increase abstraction. Donc, alors, in the white bank I worked for, they try to work like that, to model, to use UML modeler. They don't have a tool like a Swappy, but I think it will coming. Apply patterns. I don't have the time to talk about patterns. Automate the transformation from the business model to the APIs. And in the example, I use any kind of UML modeler. I use Rational Software Architect in this case, but you can use everything. And Swappy is the tool to transform all this model into Open API. Okay, that's all. And if you have some question, our Swappy is not a commercial tool. It's the tool that I designed for my own needs as an API designer, but I think it will be a commercial product next year.